All right, just a minute while we get the vertical live, hopefully. There we go. All right, looks like we're live. All right, guys, it's a very tired but inspired Illuminostic. A lot of amazing things have happened over the last week. I haven't been streaming much because my family has reunited, so I've been putting my energy into, spending time with my son and fixing stuff with my partner, which is all going really well. So really happy about that. Also, this little thing here is a piece of kushuro, which is a kushuro, sorry. It's a blue-green algae that's actually a colony of cyanobacteria, and it is 42% highly digestible protein, more than meat. It has cytotoxins that are produced by the cyanobacteria that inhibit the growth of tumors. It's full of B vitamins, amino acids, DHA, things that regenerate cells, and it might possibly be the most nutritious and the most medicinal food on the planet, and it's not that well known outside of South America from what I can tell. So I feel so honored to be able to feed my son this stuff every day and eat it myself. And I am able to ship it both fresh and dried. So if you watch my Andean superfood salad video, there are links to studies, and it's absolutely incredible. Totally blown away by this stuff. Also, before we get into the main subject of this stream, I have been invited to make rape with Huni Kuni people from Brazil on Sunday, and it's actually a pretty remarkable opportunity because it's very rare that outsiders are given the recipes, and they have actually given me permission to to video everything, and the guy that put it together is a professional cinematographer. So I think that was probably a really good connection to make, and just all sorts of good things are happening. Really excited about the rape in particular, because that's really an honor, and I'm pretty sure there's no video like that on YouTube, so pretty stoked about that. And so I guess that brings us to the main subject of this stream, which was actually inspired by my last patron-only voice chat, where we have patrons all joined together in a round table discussion. And basically, right on, Flezick, definitely appreciate you, man. Yeah, I am paying these Huni Kuni, by the way. They're displaced family, so it's really helping them. And also, you'll be able to order their rape, so I'm creating an outlet for them as well, which is highly satisfying. So, that reminds us all that I'm demonetized and rely on your support. So consider becoming a patron, and there are options to support in the chat, PayPal and Zelle, and all that stuff. So at any rate, we basically were discussing the conundrum that we're in. We find ourselves immersed in a global catastrophe, and it's an equal mixture, because this is an expression of the fundamental laws of the universe, right? That there are always equal parts opposites. And to further complicate things, everything contains its contradiction. So, for example, even the things that represent positive potential and give us hope and potentially offer liberation. I mean, the press is downplaying this, but immortality is on the table within the next few years. Cell age reversal has been achieved in eye cells, and there's a whole bunch of other technologies. What's his name? I can't believe I'm not remembering this guy's name. He's working with the field, basically, to use electromagnetic charges to alter, it's not gene expression, because the organisms, for example, this worm will grow two heads because of this electrical manipulation, but the genome remains unchanged. And so the implications of his work, it's Michael something, limb regeneration, age reversal, and then we have AI, right? And on the one hand, it promises liberation, workload streamlining, better efficacy, quick access to information, coding, anyone can do coding, but it also is about to make like 2/3 of the workforce obsolete, and people, when you think about this, you generally just think, well, coders, maybe even content creators, video editors, thumbnail makers, all these kind of niche jobs, but it's not actually true. Doctors, eventually, governments, it could ultimately affect every tier of humanity negatively. It also could be used to monitor and control. You guys know, there's all kinds of possibilities. And what I'm getting at here is even things like cryptocurrency, right? Is it a way to liberate us from the banks and give us, financial control and obscure our transactions and whatnot? Or is it just leading to absolute control of currency based on social credit and, So it's really wild because we have the threat of nuclear war and we have division in the United States on a political level that is unparalleled. There are so many threats and so many promises, and even the things that hold promise could fall on either side of the coin. So it's really a tremendously difficult set of circumstances to navigate. And I've always kind of considered myself to be part of a movement, not my movement, and not a coherent movement necessarily, but a sort of evolution in consciousness and the emergence of a very different sort of frame of mind and way of moving and being in the world. That could represent a lot of very positive changes, One of the things that I think people have almost unfailably noticed throughout human history is that people that achieve a sort of spiritual revelation, that access transcendental states of consciousness in the right way for the right reasons, tend to change for the better. And so the obvious answer to the dominator paradigm, the matrix mindset, is sovereignty of the individual that is based on that individual's capacity for self-control and right conduct. And I think that people that have achieved gnosis in some way, shape, or form do actually generally demonstrate that. It's not perfect. There are bad apples, but generally speaking, illuminated people are not going to steal from you. They're not going to wrong you without just cause, They do not need to be governed, and they will not tolerate being governed. And so the awareness that it's possible for human beings to achieve that kind of state of mind, combined with the observation that there are people in power that know that and have worked very hard to discourage that. One of the fundamental laws of the universe is that all systems tend towards homeostasis. So if mankind is not coming into harmony, it's because someone is shaking the ant farm. And so that brings us to our greatest challenge, which is that if all of these tools on the horizon are allowed to exist in a neutral modality, then all of us as magicians, those that seek to raise consciousness, is basically how I understand that term, we have the inertia of the universe to assist us if there's not undue influence. So, the big question then becomes, how do we possibly push back against this machine that controls Google, and it controls all the mainstream media, and it controls a lot of even the output from scientists, It's a good question, but I think that we actually have the upper hand, in a sense, and it requires us to commit to ascending in our own consciousness and aligning with our highest potential in the truest sense. And we have to really do everything we can to assure that with every breath and every thought and every deed, we are consolidating our commitment to that process and fulfilling it immediately. And there are two things that really sort of give me hope. One of them is the fact that the muggles, the normies, the matrix minds, the zombies, the people who are still unaware, people who are still invested in the system, and it's really hard to communicate with them. You guys probably realize that. When you confront their indoctrination and programming, it has been instilled in them in such a way that it is rooted in cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias, and the natural response, if you challenge those integrations, that integrated propaganda, it triggers the fight or flight instinct, because we have the capacity, sort of paradoxically, for heuristic bias and cognitive dissonance and all of these things, because they are survival instinct functions. For example, heuristic bias is what allows us to go through our days irrationally without fear, because we've driven our car 10,000 times and we didn't die all those other times. We basically believe that it's not going to happen this time, even though, so they serve a survival, fundamental survival purpose. And that's why they're so powerful when people are triggered. The connections are so fundamental. So, we have to ask ourselves, what the hell do we do then? Oh no. Am I lagging badly? It's a terrible time to be lagging. I have no idea why that would be. I have plenty of internet speed. Okay, so the first thing is this. The reason that they cling to their belief systems is that it is a security blanket. But I did a poll the other day that I also did last year. Damn. I don't know what I can do about the lag. Let me see if I can change the stream settings. Maybe that'll... Nope. Give me a second to see if I can... let's see. That's crazy. My internet speed is super fast, so I have no idea why that's occurring. But it's a security blanket, and people are becoming aware that it's not real. I did a poll last year where I asked specifically boomers if they believed that US democracy was real. Overwhelmingly, they said yes. This year, almost 0% of them. That's only a year. And this is such a fundamentally deep core belief with people. To see it erode and disappear that quickly is really extraordinary. And so there's an even deeper, more important element to that. And that is that once this security blanket is gone, they are vulnerable, which is almost a bad way to put it, but they are now receptive to new ideas. And it actually primes the population for a new evolutionary paradigm. So, you know, even some of the chaos and the horror that we are seeing in the world and the confusion is actually a necessary ingredient to the possibility of liberation and transcending the old paradigm and taking this to a place that is actually sane, you know? I mean, one of my greatest motivations for having this YouTube channel and my commitment to psychedelics and all of that sort of stuff is the waste of human potential that I've observed and even experienced, because our society has not been optimized to create the best human beings. It has actually been optimized to create mediocre human beings, overwhelmingly. And it's not that we don't have the knowledge and the wisdom to implement a different system. You know, as far back as I think 1860 or something, Aleister Crowley, who was supposedly the wickedest man in the world, was petitioning the English Parliament, the British Parliament, to change the education system to allow children to choose their own course of study consistent with their own ingenium, you know, their own nature and inclinations. And of course, studies have confirmed that he was correct. The point here being that we have known that that was the better course, or at least there were people pushing for it over 100 years ago. So, you know, I think the evidence that there has been a deliberate conscious choice not to cultivate the, black rock, we can talk about that, not to cultivate the absolute highest potential in humanity. And now we have psychedelic medicine, we have people that are educating themselves on, you know, psychology, people understand how to deal with their own traumas. People are realizing the efficacy of natural medicine, you know, and the power of diet. I mean, the way that I've changed my diet since I've been here in Peru has had such a dramatic effect. Yeah, I mean, the black rock thing though is pretty important, and I will say something about that in a minute, because it's pretty well known, but it could be more well known for sure. But yeah, the reality is that we do have an alternative. You know, people have criticized the revolutionaries in society, saying that we don't have a plan, that we complain about things and we don't have any answers. That's not true. That's not true. We do know how to better educate our children. We're learning more and more how to use psychedelics and how much of an impact they can have. Many of us are realizing that religion and atheism are not the only two choices, that you can have, that there is a modality of spiritual awareness that does not require you to abandon reason and common sense and science, that all of these things are not only not mutually exclusive, you know, science and spirituality, they should be complementary. And, you know, the exclusion of one to validate the other implies that the science is bad or the spirituality is bad, you know. These things actually dovetail and support and validate each other. Truth is self-substantiating. So if you are really pursuing a productive methodology, you are going to see congruence in all systems, because they are all expressions of the one set of fundamental laws of the universe. And so, we really do have the answers, and we have the methods of implementing them. And, the problem of the dinosaurs that are in power, that seem to control all of these fundamentally important, like, communication tools, like Google, obviously that's extremely problematic. But there's something I want to suggest that is about as close to woo as I would ever get, but it's science and it's fact. And the reality is, we have a hidden influence on each other, right? My experience, not only with psychedelics, but with music, has proven to me that there are, I'm not necessarily talking just about like explicit telepathy, like where you're literally exchanging thoughts with another person. I have experienced that in ways that are undeniable. The main reason I think that science is still able to kind of deny it is that it's not consistent and repeatable, right? So they can say, well, it's just luck, But if you guys have heard my stories about this, then the probability of these kind of things happening with the kind of specificity that I've experienced. But what I'm saying is that states of consciousness are communicable through non-ordinary methods of communication, like subconscious bridges. It happens particularly with improvisational music, where there's collective improvisation. I really don't know exactly why, but it's definitely a reality. But maybe even more important is entrainment. Anything that pulses, whether it is a telephone line or a clock, a human heart, they eventually will sync up. And so if we are elevating ourselves and drawing our consciousness up higher and higher, and also focusing it, this is something that I think a lot of people that pursue spirituality really evade, because it's easy to do. It's easy to memorize, phrases and concepts and repeat them and act reasonably in accordance with them and convince yourself that you're doing it. When in reality, the most complete set of talents and virtues is totally useless in the absence of willpower and discipline. It's gunpowder burned in the void. It's steam that isn't channeled by pipes, And so that is something that I think all of us could probably do better about. The discipline, mindfulness, the willpower aspect beyond the plant medicine, the studying, and I mean science, not just like, old Buddhist texts or whatever. A really holistic development of self. In the Western mystery tradition, we call it balancing the pentagram. But, what I was getting at is that the scientific reality is that if you do that as an individual, people, animals, anything around you that is oscillating at a lower frequency has no choice but to rise with you. And we also know, because of entanglement, that all of this energy is fundamentally connected and responding to each other at all times. So my, position on this is that we legitimately do have an invisible influence and a hidden hand that we can employ to affect global change. And it's also more pragmatic than that, because when you do these things, when you not just try not to eat junk food and fast food and even eat organic, you got to take it to the next level and eat maca and huanarpo and kushuru and and sprouts and microgreens and sheep and goat heart and liver and kidneys instead of hamburgers. Everything that you can do to accelerate this process in this moment, you're pretty much obligated to if you have an awareness of the conundrum that we're currently experiencing. And the reality is that whether it works or not, we really don't have any other course of action. We really don't, I used to stop eating seed oils. Yeah, I'm not sure about, I think hemp oil is probably good for you. Oh, somebody said something about BlackRock, and I was going to comment on that. Basically, people are aware that the system is concentrating wealth at the top. And I think there's a misconception in the US. People really believe that it was like the greatest system in the history of mankind and all this stuff, but there has never been an economic or political machine that was created to do anything but concentrate power and wealth at the top. It's all, and the thing is that once it was put into motion, it just continuously funneled all that into that tiny demographic at the top. And so now we have State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock that are really one thing that own almost everything. By like 2030, they're going to own like 70% of the houses in the US or something, So that's what he was referencing with BlackRock. What about drinking alcohol? That's a terrible idea. That definitely lowers your vibration, and that's the reason it's been the only legal drug in the United States for all of these years, And by the way, you guys, of course, the part of this is just a shameless plug for my Patreon, but these voice chats that we've been having really have been extraordinary, and we are amassing a group of highly intelligent, highly motivated people that are spiritual, but there's no woo. Everyone is very down to earth, and it really is necessary for us to unify. That's really the biggest problem, I think. It's the biggest problem with cryptocurrency. It's why it's not working. Because when people create 40,000 tokens and everyone is hair trigger with the fear index, and as soon as there's some FUD and the market moves a little bit, everyone sells. Unless, the people that are really committed to a sort of revolutionary paradigm commit to one token and actually hold it, and it can't be Bitcoin. It's got to be a smaller one as it just launches to actually empower everyone. You know what I mean? There has to be a unified sense of purpose. On the micro scale, it is the crisis of purpose that has derailed the lives of billions of people. It is the reason for the benzodiazepines, the ocean's testing positive for benzodiazepines, school shootings. I say this all the time, but it bears repeating because it's so important. It's the crisis of purpose. People don't know why they're here. They don't know what they're doing in this ocean of chaos, and they have the authorities forming in our minds their view of reality that, of course, is engineered to suit their purposes. If you do not determine where your compass is pointing, someone else will determine that direction for you, And so this idea that we must all fundamentally discover our true purpose, our true will, and align our lives to serve that purpose with absolute resolution, we're lost. And on the macro scale, without a unified sense of purpose, humanity is doomed. And there's no way that we are going to overturn the old paradigm. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. But you guys know Gnosis coin. What? Holy shit, man. Did he just give us the answer right there? Wow. Yeah, we will definitely check out Gnosis coin. That sounds like it could be a signs, symbols, hints, clue, the writing's on the wall, the rest is up to you kind of thing. And the plant-based diet thing, I don't know that I agree with that, man. I had issues for years and years and years, and until I went full-blown carnivore just for a few months, I made no progress. And just a few months of eating carnivore, all of it was gone. So, now I'm on a more balanced diet, but I'm not a supporter of veganism. In fact, you probably kill more beings being vegan than you do as a meat eater. Not only that, but recent studies have proven that plants are probably more sentient than we are. They know when they're being eaten. Many of them recognize relatives. Some of them know what color shirt you're wearing. Mimosa pudica can count on 2 different number lines simultaneously, right? And on and on. I mean, you are not avoiding eating a sentient being that has relatives that miss it. I mean, most cows don't really notice. They don't know their cousins. They're not missing anyone. Plants do. When you pull their cousin up, they respond. So I just think, it's really important to be realistic about the universe. And I think life feeds on life, and it's just a necessary element of, creation. And it's funny to me that a lot of people that say they want to commit to a more fundamentally natural way of life ignore the fact that there's like literally no indigenous cultures on the face of the earth that were vegan, which kind of suggests that's a modern, unnatural development. Yeah, I'm sure there are some people that it's genetically better suited, but definitely when I was vegan, I didn't feel good. And also, I lived in a couple of vegan communities, and they were nut houses. I mean, it was just narcissism and delusion, and the idea that you're more spiritually elevated when you are eating vegan was completely annihilated by those experiences. So, also, by the way, this is always an AMA. I'm always down to talk about all sorts of stuff. I look like your uncle's boyfriend. That's fine, I guess. What have I stumbled across here? I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality here, that we have all of this conflicting potential, but if you guys understand the laws of the universe, then it has to be that way, In order for a new order to emerge, there has to be chaos. There has to be looseness in order for the parts to move and reconfigure and re-engineer themselves. And then there's also the risk versus reward equation, that the promise and danger are going to be moving in exact equilibrium and lockstep. And it is probably consciousness that determines which way it falls in the end, So I don't think we have any better way to think about all this, because all it requires of us is to continue to educate ourselves, empower ourselves and the people around us, to continue to grow and to focus and enhance all of the systems in our biodomain, from our mind to our muscles. Yeah, I look like her uncle's boyfriend. I should put on some lipstick. Maybe I'll look more like him. Oh, yeah, and by the way, of course, I should mention, we have pretty much determined that September is going to be the month for the retreat that's going to focus on Andean medicine, but we'll still have jungle medicine and evidence, we'll have local shamans, we'll have classes. I'm going to see if these Huni Kuni want to come and teach the people how to make rape. I'm sure they will, so there'll be the opportunity to come and learn about that and explore the ruins and eat algae every day and you know, medicine and magic and all of that stuff. So I'm sure it's going to be extraordinary, and because we only draw from this YouTube community, it's always, you know, a very like-minded group of people that get on really well, and I'm really excited to do that. And then if there's enough interest in August, the one in September is going to be at the Blue Lotus Retreat Center in Pisac, and then if we have people that are wanting to come in August, then I'm just going to rent a house probably in this area, and it'll be smaller. So, all right, you guys. So, does anybody have any AMA material for me? Because I actually have to go and pull spines out of Peruvian torch cactus for the rest of the night, and also peel yopo seeds. I'm actually excited about that because in the part of South America where I lived before, we only had Wilca, which is Peregrina colubrina, and it has mostly bufotenine. And there's some conflict about this because you know, some people say that yopo has way more 5-MeO DMT in it, and the way that I understand it is that they both have mostly bufotenine, but when you get it wet and combine it with calcium, I don't think it even matters. Baking soda, we use the traditional burned snail shell ash. We actually collected the snails from the Incan ruins behind the house here. So they're Incan ruin snail shells that we're using for our yopo. But what happens is the 5-HO, when it gets wet and mixed with calcium, it actually becomes 5-O-DMT, which is somewhere between bufotenine and N-DMT or psilocybin. So it's not as toxic as bufotenine, but it's not quite as psychedelic as an N-DMT. Long story short, I'm really interested to try this other variant, Adenanthera peregrina, I'm not really sure. Okay, so he's asking, what is this about the mushroom cloud at the end of history? That of Oppenheimer or that of Leary? That's really the big question. You know, what choice are we going to make? Are we going to receive the message of psychedelics and psychedelic plants and rise to the occasion and, you know, a lot of people, spiritual people seem to think that modern history was a mistake. I don't think there are any mistakes, you know, and I think that this, the way that people sort of got fed up with religion and embraced materialism and atheism too much, like throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, we're doing that with science, a lot of us. So I think the real trick here is to apply the kind of critical thinking and the sort of you know, your success is your proof, sort of scientific outlook, but temper that with the, to me, obvious observation that the universe can't be just this blind random machine, you know, that's just dumb. So it's like, sky god, stupid, you know, atheism, also stupid. And then you put the two things together and find the median, and it's basically scientific illuminism, you know. So what I'm getting at here is that if we choose the right application of the right tools in the right moment, you know, to rise above all the dirt and grime, add the right spice at the right time, we will see the mushroom of Leary at the end of this phase of human history. But if we don't, we're going to see the mushroom cloud of Oppenheimer. And the choice is probably ours, you know. I can't claim to be certain that the lunatics, that Putin and, you know, Trump or Biden or whoever aren't going to just blow everything up. I do think they probably will blow up a lot of the major population centers. I do think that's probably almost certain. But I don't necessarily think that will be game over. In fact, it probably wouldn't happen if it wasn't necessary. And one thing that a lot of people in the, I guess, alternative narrative world don't seem to take into consideration so much is that, you know, if there's a certain thing that you get jabbed with that causes you to have all these problems, like certain misinformation liars are saying out there, you know, algorithm, I'm on your side, please don't delete me. You know what I mean? Why are only the muggles taking it? Why aren't they giving it to all of the outside of the, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really consistent with the idea that they're actually trying to oppress the evolution of consciousness and to stop the highly intelligent, creative, illuminated people that are noticing what's happening and getting the fuck out of the way. A little weird, you know, that they're telling us where not to be, when to move, what foods to eat and what not. You know what I mean? We have exactly the information that if you're paying attention and you're smart enough and you're willing to act on it, you're not in danger. And that's something that I think most people just, you know, I think that we kind of like want to see the world in this like good versus evil comic book kind of view. But I think the reality is much more sophisticated and intelligent than that, you know? So much of what we see is not what it appears. Any thoughts on astral spiders? I have never heard of astral spiders. I have no idea what you're talking about right there. It sounds terrible, though. I would not want to wake up in bed and discover that I have been inundated with astral spiders. I think that would probably piss me off. Beck Dussel. If you would like more information about the retreat, you can email me at the emails in the description. Any advice to make the... Man, there's a heart in the way. I can't see this. Could somebody add a comment so that I can see this word? Oh, okay. Any advice to make the most out of your consultation sessions? I mean, have you had one? You know, I mean, it depends on the topic. You know, some people contact me just to get information about plant medicine and the proper application, preparation, and integration of it. And other people, I function as a sort of non-licensed therapist, and it's just something that I'm naturally adept at, I guess, and I've been studying, you know, psychology and different types of mysticism and taking psychedelics and plant medicine for decades, so I just kind of have a very good intuitive grasp of how traumas and the resolution of those traumas work. And also, I came from a horrifically violent, abusive background with, you know, drug-addicted, not even fathers, just father figures randomly in and out the door, and a completely insane mother. And so, you know, Terrence McKenna once said that the shaman is a madman who has healed himself. And the reason for that is that if you are able to put yourself together after being disassembled, you then know how to do that for other people. So there are a couple of things that I always advise to everyone, you know, that you have to develop extremely good analytical abilities in regards to yourself. You know, you have to be able to self-psychoanalyze to an extent, and really train yourself to analyze your behaviors, watch out for manifestations of your trauma, always try to trace them to the earliest source, and oftentimes just that process of connecting an expression with it, or a presentation with its cause is enough to neutralize it. Just in the way that in fairy tales, when the children realize a spell has been cast on them, they often wake up from it. And then also pranayama, particularly with moderate doses of psilocybin or LSD. LSD is actually the best because of just the way that it works biochemically in terms of neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. It's actually the most efficacious of all the psychedelics. And the pranayama, the fourfold breath, and the process is just when you're inundating the brain and with oxygen and holding it in, you are focusing on the new program that you're trying to write. And when you're exhaling, you were focusing on the things that you wish to release. And I actually quit smoking after like 20 years. I mean, I still occasionally will have a mapacho or something, but I don't habitually smoke. It was so effective that the next day I forgot that I was a smoker until in the evening, I stuck my hand in my pocket looking for my keys, and I pulled out this pouch of tobacco, and I was like, holy shit, I smoke? I smoked. I don't smoke now. It took 2 hours. So, you know, things like that. And also the LBRP, which is like a hermetic or mystery tradition ritual that allows you to first use the fourfold breath, because 4 is the number of stability. So you are visualizing and manifesting a microcosm that's defined by a circle, as at every ritual, depending on, not depending on where you are. Like, you know, if it's an ayahuasca circle, San Pedro circle, you know, if you are a druid or, you know, in the jungles of Borneo, there's always a circle that it defines the magician or shaman's universe, and he controls the forces within, and hostile forces are kept without. And then there are 4 points that are created that represent the 4 fundamental forces of physics, whether the person realizes it or not. The 4 elements, almost always. The 4 directions actually is what I meant when I said almost always, but the 4 elements as well, although in a lot of indigenous cultures there are only 3 elements. And actually in the Kabbalistic tradition, there are also 3, and the 4th came as a result of the other 3. So that's kind of an interesting side note, that this idea that there were originally only 3 elements is pretty ubiquitous. And so, you know, you create the stability, these points and forces, and then you are the point in the pyramid, the eye in the pyramid, the consciousness that gives, you know, space and dimension and reality to this universe that you're creating. And then you define that universe every single morning, and then you banish, you draw the pentagrams in the opposite direction at night, and you banish all of the influences that you have accumulated during the day that don't serve you. So yeah, I mean, those things like pranayama to reprogram your mind, combined with some moderate dose of psychedelics, you know, not strong enough that you have trouble maintaining focus and get distracted, but not so weak that you don't notice it. You know, you have to get it right in the sweet spot, which for most people is like 50 to 100 micrograms of LSD, or like 1.5 grams of psilocybin cubensis, maybe less. And using the breath, and because when you inundate the brain with oxygen, while it's got this chemical in it that is causing all of this neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, the oxygen is the fuel that it needs to accommodate the processes, right? To fuel the processes. So it's extraordinarily powerful way to re-engineer your own consciousness, and to eliminate bad habits, and to create new ones that are good. And so, yeah, if you join my Patreon, you can get windows of time for those sessions. And also at the $10 tier or higher, you join our Forbidden Knowledge streams, where we go through this formerly secret Masonic book that explains the first 32 degrees. And those have been extraordinary. And then also we do a voice chat every Monday night at 7:30. That we have a collection of extraordinary minds working in solidarity to affect positive changes without being corny, flaky. You know, we're not going off the rails on the woo-choo train in my chats. So, do you guys have any more AMA stuff for me? I got maybe 12 more minutes before I need to go butcher cactus and peel yopo seeds. I feel UAP disclosure plays a major role in ushering in the new era. The patterns of those experiences throughout human history is no coincidence why our government's disclosing this information. I think they're doing it because they can't really stop it anymore. One of the things that a lot of people say that to criticize people that claim to have seen UFOs or encounters with aliens is that only in the USA. It's not true. Prime Minister of Israel a few years back said something about the Galactic Federation. And I had an experience where these beings identified themselves that way well before I'd ever heard the term on the internet or whatever. So that really got me. And no, it's not a deception. I'm sure of that. There's definitely something happening with it. I mean, there have been objects that hit the water at high speed, and you can tell by measuring the time before they come back out of the ocean that they did not slow down when they hit the water. If I had a 50 caliber Desert Eagle, to just make an example, and I held it here underwater and shot at the camera, if you were the distance the camera is away, you could grab the bullet. It's like 2 feet or something. So, you know, it's not fake. And I've personally had experiences that were shared by a pretty large number of people. In fact, it was, you know, everyone that I ran into the next day in that town had also, it was like an invasion in Durango, Colorado in 2010. But I'll tell you something interesting that happened to me many years ago that is consistent with what we're seeing. And I basically ate a burrito full of psilocybin mushrooms. I don't know why I did that. My body was telling me, like, you can't put another bite. Like, I was forcing it down. It was an incredibly high dose. And I found myself on a UFO, and I was sitting with these beings that were in, like, black suits, and they looked like yuppies, just like normal businessmen. And I was like, why do you guys just look like, what is this? And it, you know, in this scenario, it wasn't like, you know, there weren't like pulsing geometries, nothing was cartoony, it looked real, you know, we're just sitting at a table and there's these two guys and they're like, well, we know that you are concerned about the Patriot Act and, you know, how insane the world leaders are and all of this kind of thing. And I'm paraphrasing this for the interest of brevity, but they said it's not really like there are intergalactic rules exactly. It's just like, if you imagine when you're in a higher state of consciousness, you just kind of know, like, what is right and what is not. You know, like the Masons say that there is a moral law that's just as absolute as gravity. So it's something more like that they don't intervene in the, you know, processes of a planet until they're on the verge of destroying the planet. And they said, we don't really care. It's not about humans. We're not trying to save humans. We're not trying to save humans. But it's because every planet that is alive is sort of like an organ or a functioning cell in the body of this macroprosopis, this, you know, macro being. And so it's really in the interest of making sure the planet stays alive that we will intervene at the absolute last moment and not before. So here we are on the brink of World War III, and there's UFOs all over the place, and the governments are telling us, you know. So they just, you know, it could be nothing, but it just seemed weirdly consistent with what I'd experienced. And then a few years after that, I went to a convention with these, like Golden Light Eagle, this Sioux Sundance chief, and a bunch of other, you know, Native American and South American indigenous sort of shaman types. And their message was basically that there were these star tribes that, you know, ancient peoples had always been in contact with. The Kofan even claimed to get into telepathic communication with beings from Sirius when they drink ayahuasca, which is something I experienced before I ever heard about that, which is pretty wild. But at any rate, they, you know, had this message about the star tribes, and there was a girl there that I exchanged information with, and a few days after the event, she called me and she said, I had this dream last night where I was sitting on a UFO at a table with these guys in business suits, and they told me that there are sort of like intergalactic rules and that they can't intervene until the absolute last minute before the race is about to destroy itself. And I just listened to this, and I had not told her about this experience of mine. And when she was done, I was like, why did you call me to tell me this? And there was just silence, and she's like, I have no idea. I just intuitively thought I should call you and tell you about it. So, you know, I've had these experiences that kind of suggest that, even if it's just sort of a message from the collective unconscious, it still seems like it could potentially be significant, and it does seem to track with what we're actually seeing in the world. So, and I've said many times that I think it's possible that the only thing that could really reset the trajectory of the human race and neutralize the lunacy, the psychopathy of the leaders on this planet is an alien invasion, you know? And I also think that it's unlikely that if there were malevolent races of aliens, that they would survive themselves long enough to go starborn. You know, that's one of the things I think we have working in our favor. You know, a lot of people also say that there are already malicious aliens that have taken over, and it's like, well, what would stop them from just destroying us all like yesterday, if that's true? So, you know, there's some pretty obvious faults in a lot of the narratives around this stuff. But yeah, alien intervention, the chances are at least better that they would be benign, I think, because look at us. We're only half evil, and we're about to destroy ourselves, and we're nowhere near journeying to other star systems. So, it is also, you know, if you consider the possibility that there are illuminated but dark people that are in charge, which I'm pretty well convinced of. I was watching Dune the other night for the first time, and the Bene Gesserit are basically the Illuminati, but they're women. You know, they call themselves the Order, and they rule from the shadows and shit. And they're not actually evil, really. But something that one of them said really hit me, because it's something that I had considered before. If you look at the way the elite plan, it really seems like they don't think in terms of their lifetime. They think in you know, huge cycles. And why, if they're not even going to be here? And the answer would be that they are aware, they have continuity of consciousness between lifetimes. And so they plan things over several lifetimes, which would make for a formidable enemy. I mean, think about how chess works. You know, people that can think several moves ahead are very hard to beat. So, and that's what the Bene Gesserit woman said in Dune, you know, that we plan things over thousands of years because we know that we just keep reincarnating, and it's kind of a terrifying thought. Yeah, I appreciate that. Veterans Cannabis Advocacy Group. Things are definitely better than they've been in quite some time. Very pleased. And it definitely helps when people join the Patreon or support via PayPal or Zelle or cryptocurrency, because I'm demonetized and deprioritized. In fact, Illuminastic Life there, if you Google Illuminastic, you'll get her channel that has 257 subscribers or something, and I don't even come up. What's that about? Pretty wild. She also reposts some of my content, and it'll get like, you know, 400 times as many views or something, because it's not a blacklisted channel. So that's cute. Yeah, I mean, I really think that alien intervention would be the best possible scenario for us at this point. So it's 10 o'clock here, and I've got to tend to things. So I want to thank everyone for spending this time with me. I hope that you were inspired by some of it, and if you were afraid of the chaos and the negative possibilities and potentials, and the apparent impossibility of overcoming the opposition, that some of the things that I've said in this stream resonated with you, because I think, you know, in particularly the point that I made about entrainment really is, it's, you know, it's not a spiritual concept, it's a scientific one. And so this is the real, you know, real magicians are people that have learned to use the laws of nature, not to transcend them, it's not possible, in ways that seem to be miraculous to the profane, right? To the people that are not in the esoteric circle, in the gno. And luckily for all of us, we are in the gno, so we actually have the honor and the opportunity to engage in this sort of miraculous dance of transcendental wonder and works, and elevate ourselves and everyone and everything around us to a place of greater coherence and symmetry and beauty and sensibility and creativity. Otherwise, you know, and don't worry about the difficulties and tribulations and your own faults and flaws. A wise man once wrote, speaking from the point of view of deity, that my real prophets' feet will drag below the hells so that their heads can rise above the heavens. Also, another way to understand this that was actually originally in Moby Dick, but was cut by the editor, Captain Ahab said, in one sense, Aleister Crowley is higher than God's hat. In another sense, he's lower than whale shit. But anyone that knows anything knows that God's hat is made of whale shit. So on that note, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please consider sharing the videos, since I don't get much love from the algorithm. Become a patron and access 5 years of private patron-only content. And come to the event in September. Shoot me an email if you're interested, and I will give you all of the relevant bits. And nothing's last, nothing is lost. It is true and false to say, or all of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they're true and false. All of these paradoxes are ubiquitous throughout all of the different strata of creation, and that nothing lasts, nothing is lost. If you're talking about the thermodynamic law level, information is lost. On the quantum level, it is not lost. So, you know, any paradoxical statement you can make is truth, almost, you know. This is one of the major impediments, I think, for a lot of people to actually become illuminated, is that it's really hard. People want things to be one or the other, when everything is both, you know. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you again. Oh, I actually have another recipe video coming up. It is coca leaf powder activated, coca leaf powder, maca, and lucuma superfruit pancakes. An incredible way to start the day. So I'll see you guys again very soon.